She was building a bridge to her new life, brick by heavy brick. The announcement came on a Tuesday morning, exactly 6 weeks after the Sterling signing. The department was gathered in the lobby. Claire stood near the front, her heart racing. She had worn her grandmother's pearl earrings. She was ready to be seen. As I transitioned to regional director, Marcus announced, his voice echoing off the marble floors, I am thrilled to announce my new chief of operations. Please join me in welcoming Chloe Vance. The room erupted in applause. Claire's world didn't shatter, it simply went silent, like a television with the volume suddenly cut. Chloe Vance walked forward. She was 10 years younger than Claire, a junior recruiter who had spent more time at happy hours than at her desk. She was wearing a dress that was a little too tight for the office and a smile that suggested she knew exactly why she had been chosen. It wasn't about data. It wasn't about trust. It was about the way Marcus looked at her and the way he refused to look at Claire. Marcus didn't even catch Claire's eye. He ushered Chloe toward the elevators, leaving Claire standing by the potted ferns, her pearl earrings feeling like lead weights. The family economy. That weekend, Claire went home for her father's retirement dinner. She had hoped to announce her own big move, but now she just wanted to disappear into the upholstery. So Claire, her father said, swirling a glass of expensive scotch. I hear Marcus Thorne is moving up to the big leagues. I assume you're staying right where you are. What is it you do again? Analytics. I'm still in my current role, Dad, Claire said, her voice small. You know, her brother David chimed in, checking his gold watch. The problem with being reliable is that you become furniture. People don't promote furniture, Claire. They just use it until it's worn out, then they replace it with something newer and shinier. Her mother didn't defend her. She just reached over and patted Claire's hand. Don't be so hard on her, David. Claire is happy with her little routine. Not everyone is built for the pressure of the top floor. They moved on to discussing David's new sailboat. Claire sat there, a ghost at her own family's table. She realized that in her family's eyes she wasn't a person, she was a static data point. She was the safe one, the one they didn't have to worry about but didn't have to celebrate either. The performance review. The final blow didn't come with a shout, but with a manila envelope. As the year wound down, the office began to empty for the holidays. Claire was called into the HR office. Marcus was there, sitting next to the HR director, his face a mask of professional concern. Claire, the HR director began, we're doing a year-end review of the department's efficiency. Marcus has submitted his annual performance evaluations. She pushed a paper across the desk. Claire read the words, but her brain struggled to process the lie. Employee demonstrates technical proficiency, but lacks initiative. Frequently requires oversight. Struggles with interpersonal communication and leadership presence. Recommendation not suitable for advancement. Potential candidate for voluntary severance package. Claire looked at Marcus. I wrote the Sterling report, she whispered, her voice trembling. I stayed here until midnight for a month to make sure your transition was seamless. Marcus didn't flinch. I think you're misremembering your contribution, Claire. We all work hard. But the firm needs people who can lead, not just people who can follow instructions. We're offering you a 6-month package to leave quietly. It's more than fair considering the lackluster feedback. The death of hope. Claire walked out of the building that evening into a biting winter wind. She didn't have a scarf on. She had forgotten it in the break room, and she didn't care enough to go back. She sat in her car and looked at the building. For 10 years she had given this place her life. She had prayed for this job. She had thanked God for this job. Why? The word echoed in her mind. Why did I bother? She thought about the God she had been taught to serve. The one who supposedly fought for the oppressed. The one who saw the hidden heart. He doesn't see me, she thought. Or if he does, he doesn't care. She drove home, but she didn't turn on the lights. She sat in the dark, her coat still on. The high gloss was gone. The paint had stripped away, revealing a soul that was tired of hoping, tired of being reliable, and tired of being a ghost. The fog didn't roll in that night. It was already there. It had been there for a long time, and now it was the only thing she could see. The basement of the corporate headquarters was a graveyard for forgotten things, and for the last 4 months, Claire had been its chief resident. Her desk was a scratched metal slab tucked between rows of towering grey filing cabinets. Above her, a single fluorescent bulb flickered with a rhythmic, mechanical twitch that seemed to beat in time with the headache blooming behind her eyes. She was still an analyst by title, but the restructuring had stripped her of her light, her team, and her dignity. The most jagged edge of her new reality was the continued presence of Marcus. Though he had moved to the executive wing of the head office, he had not stopped using her. Every few days, a notification would ping on her screen, a private, encrypted file from his personal server. Chloe is tied up with client presentations. I need the regression models for the Western merger by 8:00 a.m. You're the only one who can handle the nuance. Keep this between us. For the first 2 months, Claire had complied. A desperate, starving part of her hoped that if she remained indispensable, Marcus would eventually realize his mistake and bring her back into the light. She watched from the basement as Chloe Vance, the woman Marcus had chosen as his new chief of operations, flourished. Chloe didn't know a pivot table from a power cord, but she was radiant. Every morning, Claire would see her through the lobby glass, stepping out of a brand-new, spacious luxury SUV, the kind of car a promotion and a visionary bonus could buy. Chloe wore the designer labels Claire had once bookmarked. She occupied the office Claire had built with her own sweat. Claire was the engine room, Chloe was the shiny hood ornament. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. Claire sat staring at a file Marcus had sent, work that would take 10 hours of deep focus. She looked at her own desk, piled high with the archival grunt work. Her new floor manager used to punish her for her silence. She didn't open the file. She sat in the dim light for 6 hours doing nothing. When Marcus called her personal cell at 5:00 p.m., his voice was no longer coaxing. It was a blade. Claire, where is the data? I have a board briefing in 20 minutes. I didn't do it, Marcus, she said, her voice surprisingly steady. I'm focused on my assigned archival duties. Are you being stubborn because you're still bitter about the promotion? Marcus hissed. Let us be very clear, you are where you are because you lack the it factor. If you stop being useful, you stop being here. Do you understand? You stole my light, Marcus, she whispered. And now you're mad that I won't help you pretend you're the one glowing. The line went dead. 2 weeks later, the high-gloss facade of Claire's life didn't just crack, it was demolished. She was summoned to a small, windowless HR office. Marcus wasn't there, he had sent a surrogate to do the killing. The HR representative pushed a gold-embossed envelope across the desk. Based on the year-end performance review and departmental alignment, your position has been identified as redundant. Due to documented instances of lack of cooperation and failure to meet technical deadlines, the company will not be offering a severance transition. The instances were the files Marcus had sent her privately, the ones she had finally refused to ghostwrite. He had used her refusal to work for free as the evidence to destroy her career. By the time she reached her car, the news had already traveled. Her phone buzzed with a text from her brother David. Here you got the boot. Dad is livid. He had a client at the firm who heard you were difficult. You're making us all look bad, Claire. Maybe take some time to figure out why you can't keep a win. Claire didn't go home. She couldn't face the empty apartment and the stack of bills she now had no way to pay. She drove to the church, hoping for sanctuary, but she didn't go inside. She sat in her car in the parking lot, wearing a pair of old jeans and a hooded sweatshirt. She watched the high-gloss people walking in for the evening service. She saw her mother's car pull in. Her mother paused to adjust her own scarf in the rearview mirror, looking perfect, looking blessed. Claire realized that her family didn't love her. They loved the stability she represented. Without the job, she was a liability. Without the praise God smile, she was an embarrassment. She felt like a foreign exchange student in her own life, staring at a map she could no longer read. The days that followed were filled with a heavy, molasses-like lethality. The routine that had sustained her for a decade, the 6:00 a.m. alarm, the careful makeup, simply evaporated. She stopped checking her email. She stopped answering the door. Every task, washing a dish, taking a shower, felt like climbing a mountain in a blizzard. I am 34 years old, she thought, sitting on her floor in the dark. I have no career. My family views me as a failure. And the God I spent 30 years serving hasn't said a single word while I drowned. The analytical end. She looked at her life as a balance sheet. Assets none. Liabilities, disappointment, invisibility, exhaustion. Net worth 0. The thought of the exit began to look like a logical conclusion. She didn't feel suicidal in a dramatic, cinematic way. There were no tears. It was just a cold, analytical decision. If a business is failing and the debts are too high, you liquidate. You close the doors. She looked at the bottle of sleeping pills on her nightstand. She reached for them, but a cold fear gripped her, the fear of a botched attempt. The fear of waking up in a hospital bed, even more of a pity project for her parents. No, it had to be final. It had to be a clean break. She grabbed her keys. She didn't put on a coat, even though the December wind was screaming. She drove toward the Reservoir Bridge, the highest point in the city, where the water below was black, churning and indifferent. As she stepped out of the car, the wind nearly knocked her over. She walked to the center of the span. She looked down at the churning darkness, the white foam of the rapids below looking like teeth in the moonlight. It's okay, she whispered, her voice lost in the roar of the gale. No one will have to worry about the furniture anymore. She climbed the first rung of the railing. Her hands were numb. Her heart felt like a piece of lead. She closed her eyes, leaning her weight forward, ready to let gravity do what the world had been doing for years. She let go of the railing. The transition from the railing to the air was a matter of inches, a slight shift in weight, a final surrender of the will. Claire's eyes were locked on the black, churning water below, which promised a silence her life had refused to give her. The wind is always stronger right here in the center, a voice said. It wasn't a loud voice. It was calm, slightly raspy, and carried a tone of casual observation, as if the speaker were commenting on the weather at a bus stop. Claire's heart gave a violent, painful jolt. Her fingers clamped back onto the cold iron. She turned her head sharply, her breath coming in ragged gasps. A man stood about 6 feet away. He was older, perhaps in his late 60s, wearing a heavy canvas coat and a wool cap. He wasn't rushing toward her. He wasn't reaching out. He was simply leaning against the railing, looking out at the same black water she had been staring at. Go away, Claire choked out, her voice barely audible over the gale. Please, just leave me alone. I'd like to, the man said, finally looking at her. His eyes were steady, reflecting the dim orange glow of the bridge lights. But I have a rule about not letting people walk home alone when the night is this heavy. You've been walking for 3 miles, haven't you? I saw you leave your car at the trailhead. Claire didn't answer. She just wept, the sound of her sobbing lost to the wind. My name is Samuel, he said. And I don't know what's on the other side of that railing for you, but I know what's on this side. There's a heater in my truck, and there's a diner 2 blocks away that serves the worst coffee in the state. I'd be honored if you'd let me buy you a cup before you make any permanent decisions. There's nothing left, Claire screamed, her hands shaking so hard the railing rattled. I'm redundant. I'm a ghost. Everyone I love is ashamed of me, and the one person I worked for stole my entire life. Even God is silent.